Emma Thompson had always been fascinated by the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. The 23-year-old tourist from Ohio had saved for 2 years to make this dream trip to London happen. She clutched her camera tightly as she walked along the ornate iron gates, her eyes wide with wonder at the magnificent architecture before her. The summer sun cast long shadows across the courtyard as Emma joined dozens of other tourists gathering for the famous changing of the guard ceremony. She had read about this tradition countless times in travel blogs, but seeing it in person felt surreal. The red uniforms, the bearskin hats, the precise movements, everything seemed like something out of a fairy tale. Emma positioned herself near the front of the crowd, her heart racing with excitement. She had promised her younger sister back home that she would capture every moment of this experience. As the guards began their ceremonial march, she fumbled with her camera settings, trying to get the perfect shot. The guard closest to her stood perfectly still, his face expressionless beneath the iconic bearskin hat. His name was James Mitchell, though Emma had no way of knowing this. James had been serving as a Queen's Guard for 3 years, and he took immense pride in his duty. He had trained for months to maintain the stoic composure required for this prestigious position. As the ceremony continued, Emma became increasingly mesmerized by the discipline and dedication of the guards. She watched as tourists tried various tactics to make them react, making funny faces, telling jokes, even dancing. But the guards remained unmoved, their commitment to protocol unwavering. Emma's admiration grew with each passing minute. These weren't just performers putting on a show. They were real soldiers with real responsibilities. She began to understand that their stillness wasn't just for entertainment, it was a symbol of their dedication to protecting the monarchy and upholding centuries of tradition. The crowd around her buzzed with excitement as phones and cameras captured every angle of the ceremony. Emma noticed how some tourists seemed to treat the guards like statues or props for their photos, which made her feel uncomfortable. She could see the humanity in their eyes even though they couldn't show it. As the ceremony neared its end, Emma felt a strange connection to the guard standing nearest to her. There was something about his posture, his dedication, that reminded her of her own father who had served in the military. She thought about the discipline and sacrifice required to stand motionless for hours, rain or shine, while crowds of strangers watched and photographed. James, meanwhile, was fighting his own internal battle. Despite years of training, he had noticed the young American tourist with the kind eyes. Unlike many visitors who seemed to view the guards as mere attractions, she watched with genuine respect and curiosity. Her presence was somehow comforting during what had been a particularly long and tiring shift. The summer heat was becoming unbearable under his heavy uniform and bearskin hat. James felt beads of sweat trickling down his back, but he maintained his rigid posture. He had learned to find mental escapes during these long ceremonies, sometimes thinking about his family, sometimes planning his evening routine, sometimes simply focusing on his breathing. Emma continued photographing, but she found herself more interested in capturing the dignity and honor of the guards, rather than trying to get them to break character. She respected their commitment too much to join the tourists who were making silly gestures and loud noises. As the official ceremony concluded and the guards began their final march, Emma felt a deep appreciation for what she had witnessed. This wasn't just a tourist attraction. It was a living piece of history, maintained by real people with real stories and real dedication to their duty. The official ceremony had ended, but James remained at his post for the extended duty period. Most tourists began to disperse, chatting excitedly about what they had witnessed and checking their photos. Emma, however, lingered near the gates, still captivated by the guards who maintained their positions even after the main event. She noticed that the guard she had been watching, James, seemed to be struggling slightly. His breathing appeared more labored, and there was a slight tremor in his hands that only someone paying close attention would notice. The afternoon heat had intensified, and Emma could see small beads of sweat glistening on his forehead beneath the heavy bearskin hat. Emma's concern grew as she watched. Her father had told her stories about military service, including the physical demands and the importance of looking out for fellow soldiers. Even though she was just a tourist, she couldn't shake the feeling that this young guard might be in distress. The temperature had soared to an unusual high for London, reaching nearly 85 degrees Fahrenheit. James was indeed struggling. The combination of his heavy wool uniform, The bearskin hat and the unforgiving sun was taking its toll. He had been standing at attention for over 2 hours, and his body was beginning to show signs of heat exhaustion. James fought to maintain his composure, knowing that showing weakness was not an option. The Queen's Guard was expected to remain steadfast under any circumstances. He tried to focus on his breathing, taking slow, controlled breaths to steady himself, but the world around him was starting to feel fuzzy, and his vision was becoming slightly blurred. Emma watched with growing alarm as she noticed the guard swaying almost imperceptibly. Her instincts kicked in. This wasn't about protocol or tradition anymore. This was about human welfare. She looked around to see if any officials had noticed, but the supervising officers were busy with other duties, and most tourists had moved on to other attractions. The internal debate in Emma's mind was intense. She knew that touching a Queen's Guard was strictly forbidden. She had read about the protocols before her visit. Tourists were expected to maintain a respectful distance, never interfere with the guard's duties, and certainly never make physical contact. Breaking these rules could result in arrest or, at minimum, a stern warning from police. But Emma also knew that sometimes human compassion had to override formal rules. She had been raised to help others in need, regardless of social conventions or potential consequences. Her parents had taught her that doing the right thing sometimes meant taking risks or facing criticism. As she watched James struggle, Emma made a decision that would change both of their lives. She approached the barrier slowly, her heart pounding with nervousness and determination. She could see that the guard was clearly in distress. His face had grown pale, and his usually perfect posture was beginning to waver. James was fighting a losing battle against the heat and exhaustion. Through his blurred vision, he could see the young American tourist approaching. Part of him wanted to signal for help, but his training kept him locked in position. He couldn't break protocol, even as his body was beginning to fail him. Emma stopped just inches from the guard, close enough to speak to him quietly. She could see the distress in his eyes, even though his expression remained professionally neutral. The humanity she had sensed earlier was now clearly visible. He wasn't just a symbol or a tourist attraction. He was a young man who needed help. The moment of decision arrived faster than Emma had expected. She watched as James's knees began to buckle slightly, and she realized that he was on the verge of collapsing from heat exhaustion. Without hesitation, she reached out and gently touched his arm, offering physical support to help steady him. The touch was brief but significant, a simple human gesture of care and concern that transcended the formal boundaries between tourist and guard. Emma didn't grab or pull. She simply provided a steady presence, a moment of human connection that acknowledged his struggle and offered assistance. The moment Emma's hand made contact with James's arm, several things happened simultaneously. Her gentle touch provided the physical support he desperately needed to steady himself, preventing what could have been a dangerous fall. For James, the unexpected kindness from a stranger was both startling and deeply moving. James looked directly at Emma for the first time, and their eyes met in a moment of pure human connection. Despite his training and the protocols that governed every aspect of his duty, he couldn't ignore the genuine concern and compassion he saw in her face. She wasn't trying to make him break character for a photo or a laugh. She was simply trying to help another human being in distress. Emma whispered softly, "Are you okay? You look like you need some water or shade." Her voice was barely audible, meant only for him. She maintained her gentle grip on his arm, providing just enough support to help him regain his stability without being intrusive or demanding. For a brief moment, James felt an overwhelming urge to respond, to thank this kind stranger who had risked getting in trouble just to help him. His throat was dry and he was indeed desperately thirsty. The cool touch of her hand against his uniform sleeve was oddly comforting in the oppressive heat. But then James remembered his duty and his training. He straightened his posture, drawing strength from somewhere deep within. However, instead of maintaining the typical stoic expression that tourists usually encountered, something extraordinary happened. James made a decision that went against years of training but honored something more fundamental: human decency and gratitude. He looked directly at Emma and, for just a moment, allowed his professional mask to slip. His eyes softened, and the corners of his mouth turned upward in the slightest smile. Barely perceptible to anyone not paying close attention, but unmistakably genuine. It was a smile of gratitude, recognition, and shared humanity. Emma's heart skipped a beat when she saw this subtle but profound response. She realized that her simple act of kindness had been acknowledged and appreciated. The guard hadn't broken protocol dramatically, but he had found a way to communicate his gratitude while still maintaining his duty. Unknown to both Emma and James, this entire interaction had been witnessed by several other tourists who had remained in the area. One of them, a teenager named Marcus from Australia, had been filming the guards with his phone when he noticed Emma's approach. He instinctively kept recording, capturing the entire exchange. Emma's concerned approach, her gentle touch, and most importantly, the guard's subtle but heartfelt response. Marcus wasn't initially planning to share the video. He had simply been documenting his London vacation. But as he watched the footage later, he realized he had captured something special. The video showed a moment of genuine human connection that transcended cultural boundaries and formal protocols. Emma slowly released her gentle grip on James's arm once she was confident he had regained his stability. She stepped back respectfully, giving him space to resume his official duties. But before she moved away entirely, she offered one more quiet word. "Take care of yourself." James felt a renewed sense of purpose as Emma stepped back. Her kindness had somehow given him the strength to continue his duty with dignity. He straightened his shoulders, adjusted his grip on his rifle, and resumed his perfect posture. But something had changed. He now carried with him the warmth of human compassion that would help him through the remainder of his shift. The other tourists who had witnessed the interaction were moved by what they had seen. Several people approached Emma afterward, praising her kindness and expressing their own concern for the guard's well-being. Word began to spread among the remaining crowd about the young American tourist who had shown such compassion. Emma spent the rest of her afternoon in London thinking about the encounter. She didn't regret her decision to help, even though she knew she had technically broken protocol. Sometimes, she reflected, doing the right thing meant prioritizing human welfare over rigid rules. She hoped the guard would be okay and that she hadn't gotten him into any trouble. Marcus spent the evening in his London hotel room, repeatedly watching the video he had captured. Each time he viewed the footage, he was struck by the genuine emotion and humanity displayed in those few seconds. The video was only 43 seconds long, but it told a complete story of compassion, duty, and human connection. The next morning, Marcus decided to share the video on his social media accounts with a simple caption: "American tourist shows kindness to Queen's Guard, who was struggling in the heat. His response will restore your faith in humanity." He posted it across several platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, not expecting much beyond likes from his friends and family back home. Within hours, something unexpected began to happen. The video started gaining traction at an incredible rate. People were sharing it with comments about how refreshing it was to see genuine kindness in a world often filled with negativity. The story resonated with viewers who were tired of seeing tourists treating guards as mere entertainment props. Emma, meanwhile, had continued her London vacation, visiting museums and exploring the city's historic neighborhoods. She had no idea that her moment of compassion had been recorded, much less that it was beginning to spread across the internet. She was too busy enjoying her dream trip to check social media regularly. By the second day after posting, Marcus's video had been shared thousands of times. News outlets began picking up the story, and it started appearing on morning television programs across the UK and internationally. The narrative was compelling. A young American tourist who chose compassion over protocol, and a dedicated guard who found a way to acknowledge her kindness while maintaining his duty. James, still unaware of his newfound internet fame, continued his regular duties at Buckingham Palace. However, he noticed that tourists seemed to be treating him and his fellow guards with increased respect. Some visitors even thanked the guards for their service, which was unusual but welcome. The video caught the attention of British tabloids, who began trying to identify both the tourist and the guard. Headlines appeared reading, "Heartwarming moment shows American. Tourists' kindness to Royal Guard, and when humanity trumps protocol. Tourists' gentle touch goes viral." International news networks picked up the story as well. American morning shows featured the video, with hosts praising Emma as a positive representative of American tourists abroad. The story was particularly popular because it showed cross-cultural respect and Kindness during a time when international relations often dominated headlines for negative reasons. Social media users began sharing their own stories of kindness they had witnessed or experienced while traveling. The video sparked conversations about the balance between respecting formal protocols and showing basic human compassion. Many commenters noted that Emma's approach was respectful and discreet, making it a perfect example of how to help someone while still honoring their professional responsibilities. Emma's phone began buzzing with notifications from friends and family back in Ohio who had seen the video. Her younger sister was the first to call, excitedly telling Emma that she was famous on the internet. Emma was initially confused, having no memory of being filmed during her London activities. When Emma finally watched the video that Marcus had posted, she was amazed to see herself in those moments of concern for the guard. She barely recognized herself in the footage. She looked so focused and determined to help. Watching it back, she felt proud of her decision but also slightly overwhelmed by the attention it was receiving. The response to the video was overwhelmingly positive, with thousands of comments praising Emma's kindness and the guard's gracious response. People from around the world shared the video with messages about how it had brightened their day and restored their faith in human decency. James remained unaware of his internet celebrity status until a fellow guard showed him the video on his phone during a break. James was initially embarrassed to see himself in a moment of vulnerability, but as he read the positive comments and messages of support, he began to understand the impact of what had happened. The palace officials were also becoming aware of the viral video, and they faced a decision about how to respond to this unprecedented situation involving one of their guards and a breach of protocol that had captured the world's attention. The viral video had reached over 2 million views within a week, and media attention was intensifying. News crews from around the world had gathered outside Buckingham Palace, hoping to interview Emma, James, or palace officials about the incident. The story had taken on a life of its own, becoming a symbol of compassion crossing cultural boundaries. Palace officials found themselves in an unusual position. Technically, protocol had been broken when Emma touched the guard, and James had shown emotion while on duty. However, the public response was so overwhelmingly positive that taking disciplinary action would likely create a public relations nightmare. The world was celebrating both the tourists' kindness and the guards' humanity. Emma was staying at a small hotel in central London when reporters began trying to track her down. Hotel staff, recognizing her from the video that was playing on every news channel, approached her with requests for interviews. Emma was overwhelmed by the attention and unsure how to handle her unexpected fame. In a decision that surprised many, Emma agreed to give one interview to a respected British news program. She wanted to set the record straight about her motivations and ensure that James wouldn't face any negative consequences for his response. She spent hours preparing, wanting to articulate her feelings thoughtfully. During the televised interview, Emma spoke with genuine emotion about the moment. "I saw another human being who needed help," she explained to the interviewer. "I wasn't thinking about protocols or rules. I was thinking about what my parents taught me about helping others." The guard's response showed me that kindness is universal, even in the most formal circumstances. James watched Emma's interview from his barracks, feeling a deep appreciation for how she had handled the attention. She had been careful to emphasize his professionalism and dedication, making it clear that he had never abandoned his duties, only acknowledged her kindness with the smallest possible gesture. The interview only increased public interest in the story. Viewers were charmed by Emma's humility and genuine concern for James's well-being. She had handled the spotlight with grace, focusing on the positive message rather than seeking personal attention or gain. Palace officials made an unprecedented decision following Emma's interview. They issued a formal statement acknowledging the incident and praising both individuals involved. The statement read, "The royal household appreciates the genuine concern shown by the American visitor for the well-being of our guardsmen. Both individuals demonstrated the highest qualities of compassion and duty." More surprisingly, the palace announced that they would like to invite Emma to a private meeting to thank her personally for her kindness and to recognize the positive international attention her actions had brought to the royal guard. This invitation made headlines around the world. It was virtually unheard of for the palace to extend such recognition to a tourist. James received word that he would also be part of this recognition ceremony. His commanding officers praised his handling of the situation, noting that he had found a way to acknowledge kindness while maintaining his professional standards. Rather than facing discipline, he was being commended for his service and his grace under pressure. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, giving both Emma and James time to prepare for what would undoubtedly be another highly publicized event. Emma extended her London stay to participate in the ceremony, while James arranged time off from his regular duties. Social media continued to buzz with updates about the story. The hashtag #compassion over protocol began trending worldwide, with people sharing their own stories of times when human kindness had transcended formal rules or social boundaries. The story had evolved into something much larger than its original moment. Emma spent her extra days in London, visiting with local families who had reached out to her through social media. Many Londoners wanted to personally thank her for showing such respect for their traditions, while also demonstrating genuine human compassion. These meetings were private and heartwarming, showing Emma a side of British hospitality that most tourists never experience. James used his preparation time to reflect on how this experience had changed his perspective on his role as a guard. He had always taken pride in his duty, but now he understood even more deeply the symbolic importance of his position and how his actions could impact people around the world. The upcoming palace meeting was generating international media coverage, with news outlets speculating about the unprecedented nature of the recognition and what it might mean for future protocols regarding tourist interactions with the royal guard. The day of the palace meeting arrived with unprecedented media attention. International news crews lined the streets leading to Buckingham Palace, and the story dominated headlines across multiple continents. Emma woke up in her hotel room feeling nervous but honored to represent the positive spirit of cultural exchange and human kindness. Emma had chosen to wear a simple but elegant navy blue dress for the occasion, wanting to show respect for the formality of the palace while maintaining her authentic, down-to-earth personality. She had spent the morning responding to messages from friends and family back home who were watching the coverage with pride and excitement. James prepared for the ceremony with a mixture of nervousness and pride. He wore his full dress uniform, polished to perfection, representing not just himself but the entire Royal Guard regiment. His fellow guards had wished him well, many expressing how proud they were that one of their own was being recognized for maintaining both duty and humanity. The private ceremony took place in one of the palace's smaller reception rooms, away from the public eye, but still maintaining the dignity and formality appropriate for such recognition. Senior palace officials were present, along with representatives from the British military and diplomatic corps. When Emma and James met face-to-face for the first time since that moment outside the palace gates, the connection was immediate and genuine. They shook hands formally, but their eyes reflected the shared understanding of what their brief interaction had meant to both of them and to millions of people around the world. A senior palace official spoke about how their interaction had demonstrated the best qualities of both British tradition and international friendship. He praised Emma for her respect and compassion, and commended James for his professionalism and grace under challenging circumstances. Emma was presented with a commemorative medal recognizing her as an honorary friend of the royal household, an extremely rare honor typically reserved for individuals who have made significant contributions to British-American relations. The medal came with a certificate thanking her for demonstrating the finest qualities of international friendship and human compassion. James received a commendation for exemplary service, recognizing not just his handling of the viral incident, but his overall dedication to duty. The commendation specifically noted his ability to maintain professional standards while acknowledging genuine human kindness, a balance that officials said represented the highest ideals of the Royal Guard. During the private ceremony, Emma and James were given the opportunity to speak with each other more extensively. Emma learned that James had grown up in Yorkshire and had always dreamed of serving as a Royal Guard. James discovered that Emma worked as an elementary school teacher back in Ohio and had saved for 2 years to afford her dream trip to London. They found common ground in their shared values of service to others, Emma through education, James through military service. Both had been raised with strong family values emphasizing duty, respect, and helping others when possible. Their conversation revealed why their brief interaction had resonated so deeply with people worldwide. The palace officials were impressed by both individuals' humility and grace during the ceremony. Neither Emma nor James sought personal gain from their experience. Instead, both focused on the positive message their story could send about kindness, duty, and cross-cultural respect. Following the formal ceremony, Emma and James were given a private tour of sections of Buckingham Palace typically closed to the public. They walked through historic halls and rooms, with James sharing his knowledge of palace history and Emma asking thoughtful questions about British traditions and customs. The tour concluded in the palace gardens, where they had a few minutes to reflect privately on how their lives had changed since that moment of connection outside the palace gates. Both acknowledged that they never expected a simple act of kindness to have such far-reaching impact. Before leaving the palace, Emma and James exchanged contact information, agreeing to stay in touch as friends. They had formed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values, something that transcended the initial, viral fame of their encounter. As they prepared to leave the palace separately, Emma to continue her London vacation and James to return to his duties, both reflected on how one moment of human compassion had created ripples of positive change that extended far beyond their individual lives. The media coverage of the ceremony was extensive and universally positive, with news outlets around the world celebrating the palace's recognition of both individuals and the values their interaction represented. 6 months after the viral video changed their lives, both Emma and James had settled into their new reality as symbols of international friendship and human compassion. The immediate media attention had subsided, but the impact of their story continued to influence people around the world. Emma returned to her teaching job in Ohio with a completely different perspective on her role as an educator. Her experience had shown her the power of small acts of kindness to create positive change. She incorporated lessons about cultural respect and international friendship into her classroom, sharing age-appropriate stories about her London experience with her students at the elementary school, where Emma worked, organized a fundraiser to bring a group of British students to Ohio for a cultural exchange program. The initiative, inspired by Emma's story, raised enough money to host 12 students from James's hometown in Yorkshire, creating lasting friendships between children from both countries. James continued his service as a royal guard with renewed purpose and understanding of his role's broader significance. He had become something of a mentor to new guards, teaching them not just about protocol and procedures, but about the human aspect of their service and their role as ambassadors of British values. The palace implemented new guidelines for guard interactions with tourists, acknowledging that while protocol must be maintained, compassionate responses to genuine human need should be handled with discretion and understanding. The guidelines became known informally as the Emma Protocol, recognizing the balance between duty and humanity. Marcus, the Australian teenager who had filmed the original video, used his unexpected social media following to promote positive news stories and acts of kindness from around the world. His account became a platform for sharing uplifting content, with hundreds of thousands of followers who appreciated his focus on human goodness. The friendship between Emma and James grew stronger through regular video calls and messages. They discovered they had more in common than their initial encounter had revealed. Both loved reading historical fiction, both were devoted to their families, and both had been deeply affected by how their simple interaction had touched so many lives. James visited Emma in Ohio during his annual leave, experiencing American hospitality and teaching Emma's students about British history and traditions. The visit was covered by local news, but the media attention was warm and focused on the continuing friendship rather than sensationalizing their story. Emma planned to return to London the following year, and James had arranged to take leave time to show her parts of Britain beyond the tourist attractions. Their friendship had evolved into something genuine and lasting, built on mutual respect and shared experiences that few people could understand. The viral video continued to be shared regularly on social media, often appearing during times of international tension, as a reminder that human kindness transcends political boundaries and cultural differences. It had become a symbol of hope and connection in an increasingly divided world. Both Emma and James received hundreds of letters from people around the world who had been inspired by their story. Teachers wrote about using the video in lessons about kindness and cultural respect. Military families shared stories about how the video had helped them explain the balance between duty and humanity to their children. The commemorative medal Emma received from the palace held a place of honor in her Ohio home, but she valued even more the friendships and positive changes that had resulted from her moment of compassion. She often told people that the real reward wasn't the recognition, but knowing that one small act of kindness had encouraged others to be more compassionate. James kept his commendation displayed in his quarters, but like Emma, he found the greatest satisfaction in the ongoing positive impact of their story. Fellow soldiers from around the world had reached out to him, sharing their own experiences of balancing duty with humanity in their service. Their story had become part of modern folklore about the power of individual actions to create positive change. It was studied in international relations classes, shared in corporate training about customer service and human connection, and referenced in discussions about how social media could be used to spread positivity. As they looked back on that hot summer day outside Buckingham Palace, both Emma and James understood that their brief interaction had been about something much larger than either of them individually. It had been about the universal human need for compassion, respect, and connection that transcends all boundaries and protocols. The lasting legacy of their story continued to inspire people to choose kindness over indifference, to see the humanity in others regardless of their role or position, and to remember that even the smallest gestures of compassion can have profound and far-reaching effects on the world around us.